Good afternoon, it's John Bell, the Director of Healthy Planet at the European Commission here speaking. And I'm delighted to have you to join us to discuss actually how are we going to restore our ocean and water systems, our main life support system that is in such distress from pollution, from ecosystem collapse, from the economic hardships of the people who are living around it, the rivers and seas and lakes. How are we actually going to make the transformation that is at the heart of our ambition, both in the European Green Deal, to restore our ecosystems, to restore our rivers, 25,000 kilometres of our rivers, and to use it as part of building the next kind of communities, the next kind of economy, the next kind of ecology in Europe. We can't do it alone, and we can't do it with single instruments. We need to work across instruments and policies. This word synergies is at the centre of our discussion today. How do we get the Greek syn, bringing together into synergies? How do we work across the programmes to bring the leverage that's necessary to meet the scale and speed of ambition that we need if we're going to get our main life support system back into shape by the end of the decade? So this afternoon we have a chance to talk to people who are right at the heart of this issue, the synergies. How do we bring different programmes together? The enormous means that the European Union is putting in place in different areas, whether we're talking about regional funds or science and research funds or environmental funds or the investment funds that are put in place or the agriculture funds. How do we make it easy for the people who are at the heart of this mission to make those bridges between programmes, to get the leverage so we can demonstrate at scale that we can actually deliver this by the end of this decade of decision? I'm delighted to have today a remarkable panel of people who are living examples in many cases of this spirit of synergies. Fantina Madricardo, who's a coordinator of a number of different kind of projects, from the European Marine and Fisheries Fund, Margnet, to Horizon 2020 Maelstrom, and to the Life Dream Project. You should probably get a medal, Fantina, just because you've worked across the three programmes. We'll then have our colleague Sarah Pitonet, who's a coordinator of the great Horizon 2020 Blue Cloud Project, which is at the heart of the Green Deal. And as we know, the Green Deal is our European destiny. It's what we're for the next generation, and research and innovation has to steer us there. And then to Curzio Cervelli, who's coordinating a great Interreg project in the Mediterranean. And last but by no means least, we'll give our concluding remarks to my great colleague in the European Parliament, Dr. Maria da Graça Carvalho, who in many ways has been the muse or the archangel behind research and innovation Horizon Europe and the interrelationship between the Industry Committee and the Maritime Affairs, and where the place of women are in all of that. So Gracia, we'll come back to you at the end. I'm sure you'll be able to bring this all into an effective conclusion. So, synergies. Where do we start with this? It's such a big topic, and I think the place to start is with the mission is on the ground, where people understand what it is that we need to do. How are we to use these different funding processes? And maybe as you're talking, colleagues, in what way could we actually use the mission to simplify the access to this point of synergies for the users on the ground in the regions? So I'm going to turn to you, Fantina. I was absolutely struck by the fact that you have actually embodied synergies in your work. So I'm just wondering, you've involved yourself in 3 projects across 3 different kinds of programmes. How do you think we can start? What is the most important things we could do to make synergies a reality, translating the knowledge and the solutions developed across other instruments so we can actually get this ambition to be something that happens on the ground? Fantina, over to you.
So thank you for the nice introduction. So it's a difficult question, but I can tell you what was our experience. So we started, I think, from a good concept. So we tried to tackle the issue of marine litter from different point of views, not only to monitor it, so to see where it is, but also to trying to provide, so to say, a different kind of solutions, so to find where it is, but also to try to really to remove it and to recycle it, because we know that we know that the bottleneck often is what to do with the litter when we collect it, when we do also, you know, actions of collection or cleanups and so on and so forth. The problem is what we do with this material. Since this material is dirty, it's difficult to be recycled. And so what we did is really to try to find innovations and innovative solutions to tackle all these different aspects related to the problem. And I think this was a winning concept. So to try to involve a multidisciplinary team, and we reproposed the concepts at different levels. So we started with the smaller project. The Marginet project was founded by the European European Maritime and Fishery Fund. It was a small project with a good concept. But then we enlarged, and we, of course, we made many more progresses also from the innovation and technological point of view with the Maelstrom Project and Horizon 2020. See here, you see now they share the screen the concept that we had. So that tackles all the different aspects, from knowing where it is, to reduce it, to recycle it, and of course to involve the categories that are directly involved with the marine litter problems, such as the fishery sector or aquaculture sector, but also, of course, the broad public. But also we try to tackle the legislations, because there are also bottlenecks that concerns that. So, for example, in Italy, until very recently, until May this year, it was not possible to bring the marine litter at the shore and to dispose it without paying something. So now, of course, the law changed, but this had a very big impact. So the idea is really to tackle this thing together. If we go further with the next, so we updated it in the Maelstrom project, and that was 10 times bigger as a project, but it has the same concept. Of course, the technological solutions are much more advanced in the research and innovation action of Maelstrom. And now what we are doing with the Life Dream project, we are actually exporting these solutions to other environments. So Maelstrom was focused on coastal regions, of coastal environments. Instead, the Life Dream project is focusing on the deep sea reefs and corals that are in other areas of the Mediterranean. So I think if you have a good idea, then it's good to try to look for different kind of fundings to take it to continue it.
That's great. Thank you, Fantina. And I think there's a lesson here for us. If we could make it easy for this kind of systematic move from specific projects up to scaling to different situations, then maybe we could start to address the systemic problems that we're facing in this area. If I can move now over to Sarah Pitone, who's a coordinator of the Blue Cloud project, which I think was part of the Green Deal call. You're coordinating this very critical project, which has to step into this space where so much is important. Data is the currency, as they say, of the new world. How would you actually see the best way in which a project like this can drive the kind of carbon neutral and circular future destination, which we will get to, but maybe not quickly enough without a project like yours?
Many thanks, Mr. Bell, for the question, and thanks all to my colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here today. In fact, thank you for letting me present in Blue Cloud, which is correctly, as you mentioned, the flagship initiatives of the Future of the Seas and Ocean program of the European Commission. I also have some slides that will help the audience follow my presentation. So Blue Cloud is built in what we call the thematic European Open Science Cloud for the marine community. So it's aiming at promoting the sharing of data, resources and solutions by building a web-based environment, an open science platform that gives access to an incredible amount of data sets, data sources, but also interoperable services and products, all in one place to allow researchers perform open science. In the next slides, you'll see what are the key products of the Blue Cloud Open Science platform. So there is a discovery and access services that allows retrieval and gathering of data from different data providers. We count them 9 so far available that give access to 10 million data sets to researchers in an open access way. Then there is a virtual research environment where actually the data can be brought in and used by accessing computing and analytic facilities to then orchestrate experiments. And then we have the virtual labs that are configured as demonstrators, so analytical workflows working in different thematic communities. And since we are here to tackle and understand how to address the mission challenges, I like this feature a lot because in one place showcase the variety of data providers that contribute to this, the variety of data sets, both in size and type and domain. And below the 5 demonstrators that we have tackled different aspects, different domains that relate to the mission, so from biodiversity to aquaculture, for instance. But then we've moved on even further because, and being this session related to synergies, I'm pleased to guide you through the synergy program that Blue Cloud is implementing. So if you can move on to the next slide, you'll see some example even of program collaboration. We have established synergies, for instance, with the Jericho Research Infrastructure that is working on the appraisal of coastal marine system changes by working on a technical integration of the data and products coming from both infrastructure, so Blue Cloud and Jericho. Then we are working with Jonas, which is an Interact project, working on the underwater noise and understanding the threats that it causes to marine species to allow them use one of the virtual laboratories of Blue Cloud. Or we are also working with DOORS, which is a project gathering data from citizens, industry and research in the Black Sea region to make this data available via the Discovery and Access services also to other users. Then we also have a bottom-up approach. In the next slides, there is an example of some applications developed by early career researchers that joined a Blue Cloud hackathon. They used the Blue Cloud offer, developed applications that are relevant, for instance, for the biodiversity monitoring. So the first two that see their work to map the conditions of aquaculture seeds using geospatial applications, or working to help identify pollutant-free zone where to position aquaculture cages. Or the last one brought together a tool to support the protection of the marine megafauna, thanks to, again, to geospatial technologies. And again, we see the objectives of the mission. And my last slide to conclude relate to the digital twin of the ocean program. We're talking about synergies, how to collaborate across funding models and programs. Blue Cloud is contributing to the digital twin of the ocean, which is building a system, a space providing access to artificial intelligence data models to really replicate the properties and behaviors of the seas, and in particular contributes to the aspects related to accessing data and new sensors. You'll see many European Commission DGs in this picture, which is the courtesy of Mercator Ocean. And that's, again, the last but not least example of how the potential of the Blue Cloud Open Science platform can really serve different channels with the unique aim to boost the objectives of the mission ocean.
Fantastic, Sarah. You're triggering as many questions with the ambition of what's being delivered as you're presenting. That was a terrific presentation of how quickly we've moved in this space. And it allows me to move to Curzio Cervelli, who's the coordinator of the Interreg project. And I'm wondering, maybe, Curzio, from your approach to this in terms of the world of Interreg, could you highlight where you see the relevant synergies of the actions that you're involved in terms of promoting this kind of sustainable growth in our common Mediterranean Sea area?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me on this subject. Synergies. What is our experience on synergy? Synergies for a program is a crucial word. At the beginning of this programming period, 2014-2020, we had a lack of a general overview on our main topics, considering the previous programming period. So we decided to introduce a new typology of projects, so-called horizontal projects, an umbrella, a cross-cutting projects whose objectives was to gather different standard projects working on the ground, gathering association, local authorities, center of researchers, universities. So we divided our topics in 8 main subjects area, like green growth, blue growth, sustainable tourism, or biodiversity, etc., etc. And we started the process in 2 different steps. At the beginning, what was important was to promote the mutual knowledge among partners, among projects. So we had a first action activities about the mapping of stakeholders, mapping of activities, objectives within each topic. And the second step was focused about results, the transferring of results. So we promoted the capacity of the different thematic community, green growth, blue growth, etc., to externalize, to spread out their main results based on the previous mapping in order to be much more effective and to act as a single voice. So just an example to finish my speech, the green growth thematic community gathered 17 projects, 165 partners, representing 13 countries in the Mediterranean for an envelope, a global envelope of 30 million euros. They have been working on agro-food, eco-innovation, smart cities, and waste management. They produced joint policy papers, common indicators, training materials and courses, living labs, databases, in order to be much more in touch with the mainstream represented by the regional and national programs, like also thematic programs promoted by the European Commission. What is important in that is a double added value, the capacity to identify better the main results for the program, and the capacity for the program to have a much more important impact in terms of institution and policies. This is my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Curzio. And I think what we've seen here is there's an extraordinary starting point as we face into this remarkable challenge we're facing to restore our oceans and waters, our rivers. The 3 targets of the mission are very ambitious in scale. We're trying to move systems, not programs or projects. And the question of synergies is, how do we actually make it easier for the people we've just heard to work in this mission in these 4 lighthouses that we have, which is one on the river, the freshwater systems in the Danube and Black Sea basin, in the North Sea and Baltic, in the Atlantic, Arctic, and in the Mediterranean Sea. The question is how. So we all know that we want to have synergies. We know what we would like to do. What I'd like to ask you, and I'd also refer to our audience out there who are looking at the Slido area. If you have questions, now is the time to phrase them. Could I ask our speakers if there was one thing you could ask that the missions could do in the lighthouses, because we're talking about communities. You said at the end there, Curzio, that these are communities. We tend to look at things in Brussels from the point of view of the programs and the instruments, but maybe the missions could design something which actually is a motor of synergies for the communities and the lighthouses. If you had one magic wish from the mission on synergies, each of you, what would it be? Maybe start with Fantina.
Thank you for your question. So, in fact, we are trying to contribute to the mission as much as possible. We are personally, the CNR is also part of the Prep for Blue project that is preparing the mission at European level, and we also have won an Horizon specific blue mission med that will work on the Mediterranean lighthouse. So we want to really contribute and do our best to transfer our experience and expertise to these initiatives that, of course, should help the mission to be a reality. What I think it needs to be, we need to find really the best ways from experience of the projects to transfer the solutions that can be they have to be local, because every place has its own specificity, but there are some processes that can be extended and made transferable to other places. So we need to find a way to really facilitate, so to say, at the local level, the processes of to implement the mission, but these local solutions need to be transferred to other places so that we can really multiply and amplify the results of all the initiatives to implement the mission.
Thank you, Fantina. It's an important point. The support you were saying that's being put in place, the Prep for Blue, to support the mission. I think that people need to understand the mission is the people who are working on these goals and these transformations on the ground locally, as you said. And what we're trying to do in these lighthouses, in these sea basins, and these river basins, is to make it easy for the communities to build across these programs and on these different pieces of knowledge. Sarah, coming back to this question, it also struck me when you were speaking, Sarah Pittenay, you were talking, it was very impressive, the slides that you gave us. I'm so glad to see how far we've travelled since we started this journey. We're also dealing with a decadal process, and we're dealing with something which is a series of systems changes. Part of this, of course, is how do we move from a project-based approach to work across programs, and from programs to a systemic approach over a decade? What is it that you think will be needed to take what you're doing and really turn it into the motor of transition?
Thanks. I would say maybe two simple things, but I think the core of the system. One is to leverage on what was already produced, tested, and demonstrated as valid. So in the synergies we have established with the other projects, in the context of the European Open Science Cloud, in the context of the digital twin of the oceans, we see that making a system of the solutions available is fundamental. Mm-hmm. So making them available across programs, informing other applicants within other programs that tools and solutions already exist and should be exploited, not to reinvent nothing, but to maximize the efforts across the funding measures. The second thing I would say is to continue pushing for discussion and for sharing of best practices across the leaders of these long-lasting initiatives and the programs.
So that's great. You've given us some food for thought there. We need to move from projects to systems, and maybe we need the missions to provide a system for synergies to take place. Excellent. Curzio, we have a question here on Slido, and as you're the person closest to the Interreg program, maybe you have some thoughts on this. The question is from one of our audience. How can best we ensure synergies between member states and regional authorities involved in, for example, cohesion programs and Interreg programs and the bridge with Horizon Europe? We have the rules, but the practice, what do you think would be the best way to move forward in the mission?
Yes. Thank you for the question. It's a very crucial question. We have been trying to reach these kind of synergies a very long time ago, started with the capitalization process, but I think we needed to work on topics, on themes, not having in mind rules of programs. For instance, we are working now with some clusters having already experimented Horizon Europe. We are working also with the main actors in the Mediterranean area, the Union for the Mediterranean, United Nations, CPMR, etc., etc. Synergies are not limited to the program. We have to go outside the program. This is why the governance process is the key for Synergies. We have applied new rules within our program, allowing us the possibility to be in touch with all different actors outside the program. If you stick within your program, we are not able to reach this capacity to implement synergies. So synergies are completely cross-cutting in a specific area, in the Mediterranean area, north and south, without any differences between the programs or actors. We need to work all together, national programs, regional programs, interreg programs, thematic programs. But this is also the role of the European Commission, your roles. We need rules for the framework, but we are trying to work on the ground on that side. Thank you.
Well, that's a great call to action. I must say, we have to get to a point, Curzio, where we're all moving in the same direction, which is to make it easier for people to use the means that are there. Coming back to you, we'll move in a second to see what our audience are asking. Again, there's the question of, do you see the added value of synergies among different programs? This has been very much the case, I think, in the comments that we've had so far. But maybe back to Fantina, who's been working across these. What would you say would be the main added value of the synergies among the different programs?
But it's very important to have the possibility of working on different programs, because you get to involve also different kind of partners, and also you start a project within a program. But what you do during what we did during the first project, for example, we started to establish all the value chain related, for example, to marine litter. And when you start to establish this value chain, then it's easier. It's that it is important. So when you have involved the right stakeholders that are committed to this issue, then it's easier to work in other programs and to understand how can you improve what you started. So in this case, in our case, we could pass from a small project to one where we really then implemented new technological solutions to improve our starting from what we learned in the smaller project. And of course, it's important also to have experience in territorial programs, because this involve like Interreg, for example, because those involve directly the stakeholders, the regions, the municipalities, and so on. And those are crucial to change the legislative framework to really, or even to uptake the technological solutions that we are developing. So it's really crucial that you get in touch also to the stakeholders, the local stakeholders that then have to use your technologies and your what you find out in the project and to implement it.
Thank you. And indeed, I think for our audience who are trying to understand what these missions are about, they are about precisely what Fantina has just been saying, which is to actually have systems change that's driven by the application of knowledge, the translation of knowledge, bringing it up to demonstration scale and applying it in territorial spaces, very often across entire regions or systems. But to do that, we need the mission to be owned by the people like yourselves who are operating these programs, who are coming from communities of practice, who are coming from specific territories. And I think one of the things that people are maybe looking at today in this session that we are organised in these lighthouses, which are to create or to co-own these basin-based population centres to work and pull all of these things together. The missions are supposed to facilitate the convening of this work, and the charter in the mission is to allow people like yourselves to identify that the actions that you're doing that contribute to the great goals of the mission in terms of protection, restoration, or elimination of pollution, or decarbonising the blue economy, to do that, and then to be supported by the mission in turn to accelerate and scale that to another level. So, I mean, it's very interesting in terms of where we go here. Sarah, you talked about the digital twin, something that we're very much involved with at the moment. I mean, what do we need at the destination point? I mean, for the kind of systems change we're talking about, it's a bit like looking at the Industrial Revolution 50 years in advance and saying, we need this level of data, this level of real-time understanding, this level of science, this level of monitoring, and it has to go from being a science project to a public policy infrastructure, and it has to be driven by data and people like the people in this call. What do you think the end point is, the destination in terms of the data architecture on that, and how could the mission make that happen? Here's your magic wand, your wish.
It's $1 million question. Actually, so, I mean, the ambition of the destination implies the collaboration of an incredible amount of actors and policies, because that's the data components, that's the technological components, that's the application component, which implies intervention from the user base, which is an industrial user base, is a scientific user base, is a societal user base. So really it's a complex ecosystems that requires open access, of course, as keywords, I mean, to ensure continuous evolving of the solution, but requires policy interventions. And when we talk about data, which at the beginning of the workshop you mentioned is the currency, you know, is the fundamental currency of everything. It's true because we have experienced this within the European framework. So we deal with data providers that come from different regions. We saw difficulties from some regions in providing and making data available to those mega data aggregators that are active in the marine context. We see this even at the international level. Oceans, of course, do not have boundaries, but even so, for instance, if we work with the United Nations bodies, there are issues there also from a legislation point of view, jurisdictions around countries. So we need the systems where everybody can contribute with its own piece, and of course an overarching moderation, an overarching architecture that is able to combine these different elements towards a unique mission.
That was a great $1 million answer to the $1 million question. And last but not least, coming back to you, Curzio, you mentioned this point of governance. Now, what strikes me in this conversation is that you are already working on the mission. And you need, and this is an invitation to people watching, is you need to bring your work to the mission, sign up through the charter and get active in your lighthouse in demanding that the mission gives the support that you want. And you've mentioned this point of governance. Would there be one thing that could happen in a lighthouse that the mission could actually facilitate or convene to help us to work out how to do governance in these new systemic changes? Probably the most difficult challenge facing everybody. How do you involve people in decision making that is science-based, inclusive, rational, fair and legitimate? Is there one thing we could do in the missions in each of the lighthouses on governance, do you think, to bring these programs together?
Yes, I think so. Governance, as already said, is a crucial point in order not to stick on the same program. But we are working with human being material. So we need also, especially in the Mediterranean area, this is our case, we have to face every day, every time, different cultures and peoples, and to understand what they are looking for at that moment on one topic is not so easy. And the governance is the process that can allow us to know each other, to understand each other. So, but governance has to need a framework. I think, for instance, a macro-regional strategies for the Mediterranean area, working on a better processes for the governance in premise. So we cannot, as program, work alone. This is the problem we face now. We are trying to create synergies every day, but it's too difficult.
Yes.
It's too difficult without a general framework supported by Brussels directly or other international organs. So we need also to be helped by the top.
Great.
So the governance is a good word, but it's not on the bottom, it's also on the top level.
Right. Well, I think you're on the top level in terms of what we're doing in this. And I'm going to move now to the conclusion. That's been fascinating. And we are listening carefully to this as to how we can actually use the missions as a transition sandbox to do synergies and bring them to a different level. And with that, I want to move to our great colleague, and here we have the power of the Parliament coming into the missions and coming into this area, and we need it. Maria de Gracia Carvalho, who's a member of the European Parliament, who's Vice Chair of the Committee on Fisheries, who's been a leading voice in research and innovation, a colleague indeed down the years on the Industry, Research and Energy Committee and the Women's Rights and Gender Group. I think we need the public power of the Parliament to try and help us to bridge the bridges by getting the right signals, but also giving us the political push to fix some of these things that you've been pointing out for many years. So over to you in concluding this great session. Gracia de Carvalho, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'm very happy to be here and to conclude this debate because John Bell knows well that I have been pushing synergies in all the steps of my career. For example, I was a rapporteur of Horizon 2020, and there we have included as amendments of the Parliament, so here the pushing of the Parliament, Seal of Excellence, the teaming, so is one of the ways to combine different fundings. Now, as a rapporteur of the institutionalized partnerships, I also have included the use of ERDF as the member states co-financing to the partnerships. That was something that was not possible before and now is possible. And also as a rapporteur of the EIT, I have pushed for and there is amendments in the EIT for the combination of the funding with the regional funds and other funds. So we have, as European Parliament, put forward as amendments both in Horizon 2020 and now in Horizon Europe and in the different parts of Horizon Europe, many different ways of doing synergies, but we should not be limited to this because synergies is combined different kind of funds because we are facing so huge challenge and we need to get things right from the whole chain of research until the innovation and the policy making, that we have to make use of different sources of funding. Not only European funding, national funding, but also private foundations. So we really need to make sure that we pull together. For example, that the case that we had to face of the vaccines were an example that we really need to pull our effort together to get a solution. And there is many other synergies. You have in a fantastic panel showed projects that they have done synergies, but there are other synergies that we really need to develop. I give you an example that I've been pushing also through my career is to do the synergies between our Horizon Europe, before Horizon 2020, and the Developing Fund. You have, for example, in the AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, fantastic program, and they don't do the synergies with the Developing Fund that are financing infrastructures that will be so important for this. So DG Research has been a champion on pushing synergies, but they need also to go to other DGs, DG Regio, DG Mare, the Development Fund. So we need to have all the DGs in the same set of mind to contribute to synergies. And they need to go to the member states and to the regions and to the foundations. We have managed, for example, foundations. We cooperate with Bill Gates Foundation. We cooperate with the Gulbenkian Foundation, pulling efforts together in some of the public-private partnerships. And these are good examples. And I really think that the communication that the Commission has put together and has released in, I suppose, was in July this year is a very good guideline for the synergies. I actually have requested that in the public-private partnerships report, I stated we require a way, like a practical guide, how to do synergies. And there you can have 6 types of synergies, very well explained, from the Seal of Excellence, the transfer of the ERDF to Horizon Europe, the European partnerships, as I have explained, the use of the ERDF as national co-funded, the combined funding, the teaming that was already in Horizon 2020, and one that I like very much, that is upstream and downstream. It's probably the easiest to use. That upstream, you can have, for example, regional funds, national funds to create the basis, the ecosystem, the infrastructures, to the capacities, to scholarships. In the middle, you have the research and innovation financed by Horizon Europe. And after, you need to demonstrate, you need to give steps to go to the market. And you go again to regional funds or to other national funds, private funds, foundation funds. So that is probably the easiest way that we can do synergies. But we should not limit to that. We should really try to be imaginative and to explore the different synergies. And the mission is a nice home to explore these ways and to exercise a capacity building for other DGs, for the national and the regional authorities to get used to synergies, because there are still some lack of trust in the synergies, afraid that the stakeholders are using different funds to pay the same expenses, and this is not that. So we really need to explain there is a lot of capacity building that is required. There is the political will, but after the capacity building in terms of the operational units that deal with the stakeholders and that they can trust the stakeholders and put together these synergies. So a lot has been done. The legal framework is there. The explanations by the GRTD and the willing of the GRTD is there. Now we need to get out to others, to convince them, to get capacity, to get trust that this is a reality for our projects that we need so much. And mainly in the ocean area, we really need to have big projects getting funds from different areas in order to face the challenge of the future. Thank you very much again for this opportunity.
Molto obrigado, Gracia. Maybe I could propose one more synergy between the Commission and the Parliament to mobilise people to step into this mission and to build synergies in practice. And maybe at some point we can have the conversation in the Committee on Maritime and Fisheries so we can mobilise the communities. Maybe between the ITRE Committee, research people and the Fisheries Committees. Maybe we can bring our service and your service and answer the question that's been put to the people at the top, as Curcio said, to maybe see can we make a practical attempt to use the missions and the lighthouses to convene systems for synergy. So I'm certainly up for that, and I thank you very much for your taking the time. I know you have a big meeting in Crete, and to all of you, it's been a brilliant session. We're all paying attention. I've learned so much. Here's to synergies, here's to putting the energy into synergy and to make it happen on the ground. And I encourage everybody to join the charter in your local lighthouse area, bring your actors in, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon, especially in the European Parliament, Gracia, where no doubt we can do a lot in this area. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. It's been incredible. You see something is happening, not in principle, but on the ground. And we'd like to wish you all a very good afternoon and ask you to sign up and activate the Synergies wherever you are. Go and work across departments, across governments, across programmes, and make it happen. Thank you.